Hello and welcome to the Green Machine. I'm David, your host, joined as always by Nick. No Martin. Oh, we're going to go to town on him in this particular episode.
But
yes. 100%. But just want to welcome everybody to our brand new series. So we're going to be covering tournaments, Irish tournaments, and not just the obvious ones like the classic that was Euro 2012 and, Euro 2016 and... all those wonderful memories, and
for all the children.
For all the children, yeah. Yes, the absolute classic and dream that was Euro 2012. No, we're going to go a little bit. We're going to delve a little bit deeper than that. In fact, Nick, not a lot of people. I wasn't aware of a few things before doing research to this. Actually, we're going to be talking right now in the very first episode. After this tiny little introduction, we're going to be talking about Ireland's first ever participation in an Irish football tournament and a major tournament of that. So it's a lot of stuff to get into here, isn't it?
Yeah, this one's great actually, Dave, because I mean, I've given you homework for the week. I hope you've read over the notes and I hope you did a bit of study. You'd swear I was a teacher, David.
Now you glanced over the notes, Nick.
This is an interesting one though, isn't it? Like, I mean, I was doing a bit of research and I mean, look, I took a good chunk of stuff, not off Wikipedia, off historyireland.com, which is fascinating. I mean, I found other bits and pieces, bits of war, Dave. So you probably like that one. But good Jesus, there's so many fun little facts in this episode that we're going to go through, but fascinating stuff that I'd had absolutely no idea about.
Nope. I mean, we're going to be going through all the Olympics. We're going to be going through the European Nations Cup. We're going to be going through all of its pieces. And yes, there will be the more famous ones, Euro 88 and all that stuff. We're going to go through it all. Hopefully we'll have Martin if he gets his finger out of his arse.
What about your favorite, Dave? You have to give that a mention.
Euro 88 was my
favorite. I'll give you a clue. It came before that.
The creme de la creme of tournaments. Ireland's first major tournament win.
Yeah.
First major tournament win. That is the one they will be talking about this one for decades, for generations to come. I'll be telling my grandchildren. I don't even have any grandchildren. I'm just going to find some random children on the side. I'm going to tell them about this.
He's Garda vetted. It's okay.
I am actually Garda vetted. But yes, the Icelandic Triangular Tournament of 1986. Oh. We need to get this out to the masses. And also we will be talking about Ireland's second major tournament. That is the 2011 Nations Cup, the Carling Nations Cup. England have their World Cup in 1966. We have the Triangular Tournament and the Nations Cup. That is 2-1 where I'm standing, 2-1 where I'm doing my maths, Nick.
We need to get stars over our new badge, don't we?
We should have two. We should
have
stars.
2 stars. Yeah,
we should. That's a petition.
I think so.
We need to get that started. Never mind you one that can't get tickets for the Ireland matches. This is it. This is what they need to know about, and we are going to bring this education out to the masses, out to the Ireland fans. So if you're a kiddie wink out there listening, well, pay attention because you're going to get a history lesson, right? And we're going to start with the first one. So we're going to talk about Paris 24. Forget about your Italian 90s, as I said. Forget about your Euro 2012s. This is where it all started. And in 1999, in case anyone's out there, Nick, and you go, oh, well, that's the Olympics. That doesn't get... Well, actually, it does, because in 1999, FIFA went back and said that all Olympic matches, tournament matches from 1908, I think it was, until 1940, all count as full internationals. So I was going to say something rude, but I won't. But yeah, have some of that, son. Yeah. So there you go. So this is where it all began. Paris, 1924. Of course, it wasn't the FAI. It was the Fifes, wasn't it? The Fifths, the Football Association of the Irish Free State.
Yeah, bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
That is a bit of a mouthful. You are. But yeah, that's where it all started with, Nick. And I want to just take us through. You've done the research on this.
Yeah, so, well, I've taken someone else's research. But look, there's not much available on it. There's loads of like academic pieces done on this, which you can't really access. You have to pay for them or whatever. But there's a lot of people did their thesis on this, which is amazing. But it's a fascinating one though, Dave, isn't it? I mean, just a few little random facts here. I mean, what a lot of people don't know, and I was trying to fact check this and trying to, cross-examine this, and I can't really find something that says anything different. So if anyone can correct me on this, please do. But this was Ireland's first participation in any Olympic sport, the football team.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 16 players that were selected. And I mean, we'll go through the selection process in a few minutes, I suppose. But because of the football, like we even think of the last Olympics in Tokyo, the football always happens before the opening ceremony, doesn't it? Like the preliminary stages, the group stages. Back then, it was just straight knockout. So it's a much longer tournament, and you can't have 5 or 6 football matches in 2 weeks. So it does start a bit earlier. So because it started that little bit earlier, those couple of weeks earlier, it did mean that those 16 players who were in the matchday squad for the game against Bulgaria, they were the first ever Irish Olympic participants in any sport. There was a few other ones, like there was a few in the very early Olympics, wasn't there, in Athens, like kind of art and stuff, and like sauna and stuff like that, random ones, and there was a few Irish participants.
I remember my brother back in the day actually was telling me about back in the day that we have loads of medals, but Ireland used to always win loads of medals with sort of poems and pieces of art and that kind of stuff, because that's what used to happen back in the Olympics. And we've got tons of, I think was there something a while ago, I think we're trying to get these recognized or something like that, because I think they fell under, did he fall under the British Commonwealth at the Olympic Games? I think with Ireland, like
pre-24 it would have,
yeah. So we've tons of medals of Irish participants.
Yeah, but do we really? But it's like, what do you have all your medals in? Oh, athletics, javelin, shot put, poetry. We have.
To be fair,
poetry.
To be fair, how is that different to fucking getting it in golf?
Golf's a bit more exerting.
Oh, give over, will you? Are you Martin in the skies? Are you Martin, who's couldn't even bother his hole doing this podcast?
Yeah. Apparently, family are more important.
Family. Than this. Yeah. I mean, give over, will you? Fucking Courtney was right about him. Telling you now.
Yeah.
I hope you're listening, Martin, by the way. Not,
and I hope Courtney's listening as well, because there's going to be a nice little kind of tilt to him, I suppose, in a couple of minutes, isn't there? Well, you probably don't know what it is, yeah.
No, I do know what it is. Mention that he wore blue.
Yeah,
he was just.
Yeah, So our first game, we wore Jonathan Courtney blue. I mean, sorry, St. Patrick's blue. In our first international, so that's where that jersey came from. Because Bulgaria in the first round, the preliminary round, we played them and they wore green. They wear white now, don't they? But they wore green, and we wore the St. Patrick's, the Jonathan Courtney, St. Jonathan Patrick's blue in that first game. So there's a lot of firsts in this, isn't there? But even the build up to this was very complex, wasn't it? Like, it wasn't as straightforward as just sending a team off to the Olympics. We were probably the poorest nation to go over in terms of football. Really interesting stuff, wasn't it? Yeah,
I was just reading there. So they had to have a bit of a fundraiser going, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they had to get loads of ex-players on the island just to try, get a bit of interest in this. I know they struggled. Just looking through the notes there, apparently they struggled for some interest, but some people did get really behind it. I think they needed £900, I suppose, and they got 1,200 in total. Yeah. But after expenses and taxes, they were left with a measly 250 quid.
Yeah. Basically what happened was, like, initially, as you said there, like, they did read the FAI, well, not the FAI, but the equivalent at the time. They reached out to players, and they reached out to ex-players and retired players, and they said, look, if you can get behind this and if you can fundraise this, it'd be greatly appreciated. I mean, £870, I think it was. I don't know what that is now. I'd imagine it's quite a bit of money. Do you know what it reminds me of a little bit looking at this? Cool Runnings. You know how they had to raise the money and they were going busking and all that kind of thing. It was literally like that. They were begging ex-pros who probably didn't have much money themselves, because a lot of players were amateur then. But what they did in the end, they got Celtic to come over and play in Dalymount Park. And at the time, there was like a ban on British teams traveling.
Because they failed to recognize the Free State, didn't they?
Yeah,
the football, because we broke away from the crowd up the north.
Yeah, so they wouldn't come down. They wouldn't play in Ireland. But so this is the first time that a British team had actually come over. So they played Celtic. Now, Dalymount Park, which has a capacity of 10,000, it probably held about 200,000 that day. But they raised £1,200. Now, as you mentioned there, Dave, after tax, so there was a, I think it was called you might have it there, but I think it was called a competition tax or an entertainment tax.
Entertainment tax.
Entertainment tax. So after the government got their hands on that, and after the FAI had paid Celtic, they were left with £250.
Yeah, and by the way, the GAA, because the reason why they had to pay that because they were a professional organization.
Yeah.
Even though they were semi-pro, but they were a so-called professional organization, and the GAA back in the day and now aren't wink professional, so they got away with that. And some saw it really as a tax on British games more than anything else, and it wasn't really, no, it was basically just a levy on British games. Like, how dare you play British games? You should be playing Irish games, and you're playing the games of our enemy kind of nonsense, and that's why you have that. Just for anyone wants to know.
Yeah, well, there was a resistance. I mean, this team was kind of frowned upon, like even, I mean, not to skip to the end, but even when they got home, like there was no heroes welcome, there was no homecoming, there was no Phoenix Park kind of open top bus crack.
There was no Joe Duffy.
No.
Okay, one of the players sing happy birthday. It was nothing.
Yeah, none of that. Like they were very much an afterthought, and they're very much kind of frowned upon, because I mean, this was around the time of the whole ban, and well, maybe it wasn't that early, but I mean, to play British games at the time would have very much been frowned upon. But just in terms of the selection, I think this is interesting, and again, a plug to my club as well, which is very important, Dave. So I mean, back in those days, like if you think of the Olympics now, and if you think of football, it's under 23, isn't it? And then you've got, is it 3 or 4 kind of designated senior players, something along those lines. So back then it was old school. They had trials. So the best League of Ireland players basically went up to Dublin. They had trials, and out of it came 5 Bows players, 5 Athlone Town players, 5 James's Gate players, and then 1 player from Brooklyn FC. So Brooklyn FC was a League of Ireland club at the time, not in the States. It was down in Merchants Quay, from what I believe. So 4 clubs represented out of 16 players, which is very interesting in its own right, isn't it? And sadly, none of them are still alive. I mean, Jesus, it was 1924, wasn't it? But it just shows you kind of the it's not like it's these high profile players who are in the running to get an Olympic call up. It was very much they were nominated by their clubs, they went off for trials, and the best lads were picked. And looking at that, Dave, you wonder. Now, I know that the coach did have coach Bows at some stage, so you wonder if there's a bit of bias. And I know a couple of the Athlone players did play for Bows previously, so you'd wonder how much politics kind of came into that team selection.
Politics in Irish football?
Never,
Nick. Jesus,
never.
Some things never change. It's basically like, if you have boots, can you travel? That was it, really. I think as well, I think with this one though, they did put out a major search, to be fair, and these guys had to get time off work and everything, didn't they? So yeah, I remember on Green is the Colour with Darren Maloney, and he's walking around town on looks like a lovely spring day in Dublin. And it's basically like, if you got boots, can you travel? Can you get time off work? We'll look after you. It's just very, basically a bit all over the place, bit of ragtag and bobtail. Not much has changed really. It's very much the precursor to the
we're still kind of stuck in 1924, aren't we?
Yeah, but a bit mental. But I mean, just fantastic. And of course, they had to, in Paris back then, there was no Eurostar, or there was no, you couldn't get on the phone to Michael O'Leary and hop on a Ryanair airplane. It was a 48-hour journey to Paris via Holyhead. So I had to get the ferry over from Dublin, from probably Kingstown at the time, it was called Dunleary.
Yeah.
Over to Holyhead, and then basically get the ferry from Holyhead over to Paris.
Yeah, 48 hours to get in Paris.
Yeah, so basically, pretty much like now, if you travel through Dublin
you didn't catch that one, but it's okay.
No, I didn't catch that one.
Good.
Only I do the jokes on this podcast, Nick. We spoke about this off air. right?
Yeah,
That's
it's kind
my
of.
bag.
I mean, look, as you said, like it's kind of like I'm kind of. We're very corporate here, aren't we? Like I'm kind of, head of creative. You're head of mischief, and Martin's just the ticket out, isn't he?
He is, isn't he? And he also has knockoff hooky O'Neill's gear, apparently.
Well, Martin is the what is it? The
Martin the Greek,
executive vice president, junior vice president.
Oh, I thought he was Lord Master of Risk London. Or fucking what was the Grand Master of
Emperor,
of Risk.
the Emperor.
Yeah. How did we get onto Piers and Mar? I think we're just giving him a bit. Sorry, folks. It's just
Look, you miss recording at your peril.
Yeah.
I'm going away next week. I know what's in store for me. Like so. I
Oh,
might as well
100%.
get in while I can.
But Martin did a Roy Keane. Actually, he a bit like Mick McCarthy '96. He just didn't bother. Didn't go through great effort to tell us that he wasn't coming on. So
he doesn't love the listeners, but we do.
Not like us. So back to Paris. So they've got the Paris. They've got the Ryanair. They've flown into Paris, into Charles de Gaulle. Well, actually, no, because it's Ryanair. So they've actually landed in Brussels, Paris, Brussels, and then they have to get one of those train things, steam train from Brussels into Paris. So that's how they've done it. This is the revisionist history version, folks, of how they got there. So all right, so they're in Paris, and they're fighting off all the pickpockets in Paris, because you get a lot of that there. Around, especially around the Eiffel Tower. Was I built back then, 1924, Eiffel Tower?
I don't know. Jeez.
So they wafted away through the Roma gypsies, right? And they're in Paris. So they stayed in a hotel, not in the Olympic Village, right? Go. Back to the serious stuff, Nick.
Yeah, so most of, I think, as far as I know, the British team were meant to stay in this hotel. And because there was this whole kind of gray area between it being amateur and professional, football at the Olympics, they decided not to travel. There were 22 teams there. Ireland were part of it. Britain apparently didn't go, or didn't take up their hotel place. So Ireland stayed there, and the rest of the team stayed in the Olympic Village. And of course, as I said, the competition did start a little bit before the opening ceremony. So they stayed a little bit outside. And, they were kind of surviving on a thread, weren't they? Because they needed 870 pounds and they had 250. So, they were doing everything on the cheap, basically. There was the transport was done on the cheap, the accommodation was done on the cheap. It was very, very challenging for them. So they did play their first game against Bulgaria. So as I mentioned, they wore the blue, very iconic.
Jonathan Courtney.
Yeah, the Jonathan Courtney, St. Jonathan Courtney blue, and
not the Gavin Mizuno blue.
No, that's a lighter shade, I believe.
Yeah, that you actually could have bought, but Martin just didn't buy it in time.
No, he wasn't quick enough. Quick enough. You have to get on these things quickly, But this game against Bulgaria, so that was the 28th of May, 1924. Technically, that is the first Ireland international.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, look, there'd be disputes. I'd say a lot of football historian hardcores would probably dispute that, but technically, this was the first Ireland team, and this was the first Ireland, I suppose, tournament results, and it was a 1-0 win against Bulgaria. Paddy Duncan scoring the only goal. And as a result of this, we moved on for the preliminaries and we qualified for the quarterfinals. Now, this is the catch. So we had Holland in the next round. So our bogey team, wasn't it? I mean, think of Euro 96, think of USA 94. Really was our bogey team, Euro 88 as well. So who would have thought that, decades before this, they would have been the bogey team. But
they are bastards.
They are bastards, but they did us a favor. They beat us in the next round, because if we went on to the semi-final, so Holland beat us 2-1 in the Stade de Paris in Saint-Ouen. So 2-1 after extra time. So we did get them to extra time. If they beat us, we wouldn't have been able to afford to go on to the semi-final. Because we didn't have enough money. It was the same. Was that the same in
Euro 88? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually for
So we might give out about the Dutch, but essentially, like they've done us a huge favor. Like look, we're pretty bankrupt now, aren't we? But we could have gone under years ago.
Isn't that amazing? Like in 1980, in 1924, I mean, I thought, you think Euro 88, that was the first time. No, knocked us out, cost us a place in the semi-finals to a fucking single goal as well.
Yeah.
Probably offside. Guarantee you Wim Kieft was offside in that game as well in 1924. And that cost us a place in the semi-finals. And then back to 1988, cost us a place in the semi-finals. And on both occasions, if we got to the next round, we had no money.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Mental, isn't it? Just another little random fact, and this is something that I just kind of I used to collect football stickers back in the day, and I saw this name, Joe Kendrick. So Joe Kendrick was part of the squad, and he hit the crossbar in this game. and I was kind of like, I kind of remembered that name. I was like, I kind of remember that name. So I did a little Google search. Joe Kendrick played for Newcastle. Now, this is Joe Kendrick Sr. Joe Kendrick Jr., so his grandnephew, played for Newcastle in the early noughties. And he played a bit of League of Ireland. He played for Drogheda. He played for Bray. So his great uncle did play in the Olympic Games. Now, Joe Kendrick Jr. didn't. I think he played kind of lower leagues. He actually played in Germany for a while, but just another kind of interesting little link. So, there's all these interesting little bursts. Now, here's an interesting one as well. After we got knocked out, we played 2 additional games while we were over there. So we played Estonia and the USA, and I thought I had the stuff right in front of me. I didn't. So we actually won both of those games 3-1, and that was the first time we played Estonia. The next time we played Estonia was in the 2002 World Cup campaign. So a load of little ties and foretelling to the future based on that competition. But I mean, a fascinating competition. I mean, like we've loads of information about the matches themselves. Unfortunately, there's no footage, nothing that we could find, nothing to really play or nothing to really go back on. But kind of looking through the stuff, it was a very, very good team. I mean, as I said, this was a team of 16 amateurs. There was an extended squad and not everyone kind of traveled. But that Dutch team, some of those players actually went on to do really, really great things. Some of them ended up playing for, some of the great Ajax teams. So even though they were amateur at the time, they really progressed and they really did really, really well. So, it was a huge achievement. And as I said, that was our first ever Olympic participants, never mind football participants, but Olympic participants. And they actually ended up finishing 5th overall. So 2 places off a medal. Now, I know it doesn't really make any difference. 5th place is one of the worst places to finish, really, isn't it? Because it's not at the end, but it's not, it's just off the medal positions. But, an iconic and I suppose a sadly forgotten campaign all the same,
It is. Just to wrap it up there, we actually lost 2-1 to Holland in extra time. I think they won like the previous game like 6 goals. That was a good Dutch side.
Yeah.
The tournament was eventually won by Uruguay, who would 4 years later go on and win the World Cup in Uruguay. And I know afterwards, also as well, the anthem that the Irish players came out to was "Let Aaron." What was it called?
Let Aaron remember.
Let Aaron remember.
Yeah.
And then they went for a big dinner afterwards, after their participation had ended in the tournament, after the Dutch game. And they had a meal with a certain FIFA president who was born in France. You might remember his name. He might ring a bell, but Mr. Jules Rimet. And that's when some of the players started singing a soldier song, which obviously would become the anthem of the Republic of Ireland. So if anyone has an issue with any of this here, in terms of this being our first ever international and our first ever tournament participation, as I said at the top of the podcast, in 1999, FIFA recognized all of these games as full internationals. So obviously there was an Ireland team before that, before the the IFA, the Irish Farmer Association, got all RC, and then we had to break away, and that's when the FA of the Irish Free State, which obviously will become the FAI that we all know and love today, basically, so this is the first Republic of Ireland team from the 26 counties. So fascinating stuff there. That's 1924. We're going to fast forward to 24 years later, to the London Olympics of 48. Not really as much success this time. And we fucking went out again to the Netherlands.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, 4 tournaments, 5 if you count the playoff in '96, but 4 tournaments that we we lost to Holland, and a lot of people weren't aware of this. Yeah, so we lost 3-1 in the preliminary. So this is before the opening ceremony even happened, and we were gone. And I mean, it was a similar kind of scenario. It was domestic based players from the League of Ireland, a lot of Bohemians players, Bohemians coach. Bobby Smith, the bowl, scored the only goal for Ireland. You know, again, it was straight knockout. Now, a couple of players I know from that Dutch team. So Foz Weeks scored 35 goals in 38 games for Holland after that tournament. So he went on to be one of their all-time leading goal scorers for a while. And just something of more recent history. As I said, like there obviously there was funding issues and so on. Getting that team over to London, not the same extent that there was in 1924, but Peter MacDonald, any Shells fans would be very familiar with Peter. So he actually ended up being Shelbourne's groundsman. He's the last surviving member of the squad, and he sadly died in March at the age of 98. You know, so even though it wasn't as high key, I suppose, a tournament compared to 1924 and all the kind of funny facts and figures that kind of went with it, this was our last ever Olympic participation in football.
Kind of sad, that, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's a weird one, the Olympics, because even I remember when Team GB decided to put a team in, my God, but did they have some absolute fierce opposition, didn't
Objections,
they?
yeah. Well, the North, and Wales went, but the North and Scotland wouldn't. And even at that, like, I mean, a lot of really senior players wouldn't go, so they ended up bringing the likes of, you know, Craig Bellamy and lads like that. You know, the likes of Gareth Bale, I don't think went, and I think Ryan Giggs ended up going. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bastardized competition in a way, isn't it? I think the South American teams are really big into it because they've kind of always had under 23 teams, haven't they? And I think and then some random ones like China always have an Olympic team, and the Aussies always have an Olympic team. So
Messi's thrown in there, wasn't he? Like a gunpoint, practically.
Yeah.
I mean, we have had Olympic teams. I don't know off the top of my head actually when the last Olympic team was around, but I know we had one in 87 and 86 around that time, because I actually have a program, the Irish Olympic team, you know, and all that. So it'd be something. I think anything with football, I don't think you can have enough tournament football, and I think it's something that they definitely need to definitely look at and get that back in there. But that's incredible, though, isn't it? Netherlands, 4 tournaments, 5, as you said, including the Euro playoff of '95. That's outstanding. That is.
And as I said, Dave, like, I mean, we've only hit the tip of the iceberg with this, haven't we? I mean, there's so much info out there. Like, I'm probably going to pay and read it up. I'm that fascinated in it. Like the 48 one, we're probably not doing justice. I mean, we've only given it a brief mention, but you know, a fascinating competition all the same. Our last Olympic appearance as a football team.
We absolutely will. And we are going to go, we're going to wrap this one up now, but we are going to go back and revisit these tournaments in much greater detail. It's just, unfortunately, with Irish history, it's quite difficult to find sometimes, which is unfortunate. This information should be a lot easier, but it is fascinating. So many little bits and pieces. Yeah, and absolutely fascinating stuff. And we are going to go back and cover the 1948 Olympics in a lot greater detail, probably the 24 one as well. There's so much stuff there, and that's what we love here on Green Machine Podcast. We love to go through and shine a light on these things that are sort of hidden in the dark and hidden in the past and wedged away there for years and years and years. But anyway, we're going to leave it there. This is episode 1, of course. We're going to have about 14 episodes, 15 in total. And the next episode is going to be the 1964 European Nations Cup. So Euro 88, before you had that 24 years before you had the European Championships and Ray Houghton's famous goal. Oh, spoiler alert. That's episode 10, I think. You had Ireland's participation in the European Nations Cup, which obviously we know is the Euros these days. So we're going to get into that next. And you can listen to that episode and all of our episodes on the Green Machine Podcast. That's that's more than 3 www.greenmachinepodcast.com. And don't forget to check out our partners, our sponsors, and that is Kit Launch. And you can get those guys on what is with me with the W's? www.kitlaunchcork.com, and you can get a 20% discount if you use a promo code, which is Green Machine 20. That's all caps, Green Machine 20. You can get 20% off. You can get loads of stuff there, Nick. Can't you get none of that fake stuff?
Yeah,
Proper,
no Olympic jerseys, sadly, but loads of good stuff,
No.
loads of really good retro stuff, and some lovely Ireland kits on there as well.
Yeah, none of that nonsense O'Neill stuff that Martin buys from China.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah, according to somebody who designed a blue jersey. But you can get all sorts of stuff over there. And they've got GA jerseys, they've got rugby jerseys, the evil GA. They have AFL, they've all sorts of stuff on there. So give them a chat, perfect gift. If you want to go on there, you want to get they do that thing, don't they, where you buy a kit, you buy a box, and you don't know what's in it.
Yeah, mystery boxes, yeah.
Mystery box, that's the one. A bit like me when I get a parcel from Hermes. From Tinder. I thought you got to say grinder. No, nothing wrong with that. No, I was going to say mystery box, a bit like when you order something from Hermes, it's a mystery. Don't know when I'm going to get it. But they will deliver to you. So that is Kit Launch. Kit Launch down in Cork, and also kitlaunchcork.com, the website. And yet again, that promo code Green Machine 20. That is Green Machine 20. That is all caps. Anyway, we're out of time, Nick. We're going to be back, hopefully, with Martin, if he can bother his arse to come back, and put his family where they need to be. And that's behind the podcast. He's probably not going to come on the next one now, is he, when he listens to this one?
Probably not, no.
Good. Anyway, right, we're going to leave it there, folks. We're going to see you episode 2. This is the 1964 European Nations Cup. Thank you for listening, and safe home.